call this meeting to order. This is the regular school board meeting of the Northfield Public Schools. It is Monday, November 26th, 7 p.m. Dr. Richardson, there was a couple items in the table file.
Yes, we have several items in the table file. You have an updated version of Bridgewater Elementary School's PowerPoint presentation for their school improvement plan. You've also got the documentation on the results of the 2 bond sales today, and some really good news on that, which we'll be sharing with you a little bit later. And then you also have some additional personnel items, including leave of absence, some increase, decrease, and change in assignments, and 1 resignation this evening. All of these need to be added to the consent agenda or the table file.
All right. If there's no objection, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. All right. Now we're on to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the school district to address the board. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board? No? All right. We will move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you had in your packets the minutes from the last school board meeting held on Tuesday, November 13th. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? Moved by Noel, seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements and recognition.
Okay, we have 3 announcements this evening. First of all, we definitely want to congratulate our Northfield High School girls swim and dive team. The Gators are state champions this year in swimming and diving. Also would like to recognize the Southeastern Minnesota Arts Council. They've approved our grant request for $6,635 that will be related to the Northfield Young Sculptors Project, and so that'll let that project move forward again this year. And then students and staff also had a great time on Friday night, November 16th, with the amazing Hondo, a St. Paul-based magician who performed as part of a fundraiser for Siri Thompson and family. The event raised over $3,000 for Siri, who is in Miami receiving treatment for cancer at this time. So again, some good news all around.
Great. Board members, any other announcements or recognition? No? All right. We will move on to the first item for discussion report. So it looks like we have early childhood first aid? Longfellow's.
Yes, we actually have the entire team.
Yeah. Crowd.
The whole crew. And again, this is a collaboration between early childhood educators, early childhood special educators, and specialists. They have 6 sections of hand-in-hand preschool as well as 2 self-contained transition rooms. Tonight we have Sarah Line is with us, Carrie Duba, the ECSE lead, Andy Offendahl, early childhood special ed, Lynette Galt, and I hope I don't mess up your name.
Gal
Shoes. Okay, thank you very much. I never would have gotten that one. Early childhood, and Angie Shui, who's early childhood. So they are ready and prepared. They told me that they weren't going to do a rap, but they're going to do rhyming today. Or were you just joshing me? You were just joshing me. Okay. Take advantage of an old guy. I said I didn't know how to rap, but I could rhyme along with you. So, but they also didn't bring a sand table, so you guys can't play in the sand either. So, okay, Sarah, who's going to begin? Are you going to begin?
Yes,
okay, very good. Excellent.
All right, so we just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of an update. We'll start from the beginning, where we in early childhood needed to develop our scope and sequence and our essential learning. And you'll see we did a couple of them. I just showed a couple of them. But the bolded ones are the ones that we thought were essential learnings, and we worked all together in a large group, used the early childhood indicators of progress. Because as most of you know, in early childhood, it doesn't come with a set curriculum per se, and it's hard to get accurate data. as we know. And so we started here a number of years ago, and I should say in each of these we did the domains of the fine motor, gross motor, language literacy, social emotional, and also physical health. And then we also included materials needed to support that, specific strategies and resources, all the way from 0 up to 5 years in each of the domains. So that we have in place and have been utilizing, and also used then to update our assessment form. And we, as you can see, do this formally 3 times a year and have conferences twice a year. And so we've been using this the last couple of years and have updated as necessary. And that brings us to the next.
Something graphic with which I'm sure you are quite familiar. This is something that our early childhood programming really wanted to address this year, which was to bring our practices into alignment with the district initiatives. And so we really looked at a multi-tiered service delivery model. And as Sarah said, we had already developed a scope and sequence some years ago. So we knew what the essential learnings were that we needed to address in the domain areas for early childhood. But what we needed was a solid curriculum, some good assessment strategies, and some ways to respond to the data that we would be collecting on our students in a sort of a flexible tiered approach. So the first thing we did is we've gotten Teaching Strategies Gold, which is aligned with the creative curriculum. So we have an evidence-based instructional strategy that we're using in all of our preschool classrooms, which is tremendous. We're actually just kind of rolling that in right now. And in that, we are strengthening our core. So in that green area, we're obviously hoping to address at least 80% of our students' needs. We differentiate as needed. That is solid and common early childhood practice. That just goes on regardless. And we, like I say, have introduced an ongoing assessment for understanding where each of our children are falling in terms of all of those domain areas. And we developed some strategies for strategically grouping those kids who are identified as at risk. And we target specific domain areas. We are trained now in the problem-solving model thanks to Gary Lewis. We had a wonderful building staff development time on Friday. And we're using that process to help us to identify those students who require a little bit more instruction. So we have strengthened our core. We developed a way to provide more instruction for those students who need it. And then we even have our intensive individual to continue to intensify those instructions as we go. This is kind of a better kind of continuum model for us to look at. Our students don't all fall in neat, tight packages. We have multi-age classrooms. They are from ages 3 to 5, and so we have a range of needs. We have kids who come in with almost no experience in a corporate learning setting. They have little exposure to books, maybe little exposure to English at all. It's their first time away from their home and out of their family environment. So some of those kids need actual explicit instruction, and they need more than we can provide in the core, so we provide targeted instruction in that area. We teach the behaviors they need to know in order to be part of a group learning setting. And then we have students who have opportunities to be at the Y, who have been in art skills classes, whose parents have books, who have ample resources, and they are already there, and they just need to be accelerated, and they're ready to go. But our core addresses that middle 80%, where we know that our students need instruction. And this last slide actually addresses what we know about good early childhood practice. Authentic assessment in early childhood does not mean that we're giving everybody criterion checklists. Do they know all their letters? Do they know all their shapes? Do they know all their colors? There is a lot of structured and systematic observation that goes on. And so we have quantitative data on those students. We do have some criterion checklists. We have qualitative. What do they look like? How are they operating in the classroom? And then we use our expert knowledge to put that together. So it's a real authentic assessment, and we get a good picture of what our children need in our classroom.
I'm just going to talk about a couple of the many benefits of flexible grouping. The first is our greater flexibility to meet individual needs, and we do that by tailoring instructional strategies and providing the appropriate support when needed. The emphasis is on peer learning, whether it be a language group with rich models in the language group or play models. There is targeted instruction of a very specific skill, so we're really able to hone in on the skill at hand, and we're able to challenge the children who are ready for enrichment. Some of the necessary components of flexible grouping is an intervention hierarchy with increasing levels of intensity of instruction and intervention, ongoing screening, assessment, and progress monitoring so that we're always regrouping children so we can meet their needs. As Carrie mentioned, we're using a research-based curriculum, which is our Teaching Strategies Gold, instruction, and focused interventions. And then the collaborative problem-solving process for decision-making, which we utilize our PLC time and the RTI problem-solving process as well.
So as Annie already mentioned, this year we decided to focus during our PLC time on flex grouping and how that might look in our building and our program. And our Longfellow hand-in-hand staff is beyond what's here, but we are a representation. It also includes other administrators, all regular education teachers and special education teachers, as well as specialists and support staff for our program. And I just feel like it's been very beneficial for all of us to be able to meet during that PLC time and to go through this process together to determine what will work best for our program for flex time. The main objectives for our flex time, or our PLC time, is the planning of domains and activities that we can do to support those domains. So we may look, for example, at social, emotional goals or language goals, and what activities can we do to support that development for those kiddos that need the extra support. And then we also look at placement of staff and children for that time. So what our flex time is currently looking at, we do it 1 hour daily per class period. And for us, we have limited time with our children, depending on the day and the session. It can be anywhere from 2 hours and 15 minutes up to 3 hours. So because we have a limited time, we have chosen to do our flex time simultaneously with our free choice time. And we feel these are both very beneficial times for the children. And in this way, each day that they are at preschool, they get to participate in both of these activities. And for some of the children, that's only 2 days a week, because we do have children that only attend the 2 days a week. So, and then of course we place children according to their developmental needs, and that is based on the baseline data that we collect.
All right. So our PLC goal this year, we decided we'll increase the social competence and relationship skills of hand-in-hand preschool students so that 80% of all students will demonstrate the ability to begin to participate successfully as a member of a group, as measured by Teaching Strategies Gold. Basically, we took the early childhood indicators of progress out of the Minnesota early childhood indicators, our learning standards. Those are the things that we usually go by. And so we decided to say, what do we really want to focus on? Through all of our flex grouping, through all of our things, we needed to come to a specific thing that we could measure this year. And so we decided, number 4, begin to participate successfully as a member of a group. Now, this is usually seen in 4-year-olds, even though it's in the 3 through 5. Some of them are developmentally appropriate to go down to 3, but this one is just for 4 and 5s. But something that they need before they go into kindergarten. Through our Teaching Strategies Gold, we're able to assess then all of this, and then we are able to pinpoint exactly our interactions with the peers. The little rainbow bars at the bottom kind of show the age group, so it starts at birth first, or 1-year-old is orange, yellow is 2, 3 is green, 4 is blue, and 5 is purple. And as you can see there, it tells us exactly, what's the first thing that we need to see them do is play with others, use similar materials or actions. Then we can kind of go and say, we collect that information. Are they doing that information? Then we can go and analyze and respond. Maybe we need to add more things into our programming, into our, to our lesson plannings, things like that. We evaluate that child, we summarize and plan, and bring it back into our PLCs to say, you know what, maybe this child needs to be put into, a specific flex group that can pinpoint how to sit and play next to another child. And then it continues to go on. Any questions?
Board members? Julie?
I was going, it's really great presentation. Thank you for being here tonight. I was going to ask you what the average class size is.
The classes, go ahead. The classes are 16.
Up to the mic, guys.
The classes are 16, and we typically, unless it's a self-contained early childhood special ed classroom, we have a ratio of about 30% children who are identified on an IEP, children who are identified as at risk using the school readiness at risk factors, and then typically developing kids. So it's about 16 students per classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Carrie?
How many adults are working with those 16 students?
What we do is we have a team. All of our classrooms are team taught. So we have one regular ed teacher and then one special ed teacher in there. And then in there we also have a special ed EA. And then sometimes some of our children, based on their IEPs, will have another one-on-one EA to be there. But then throughout our day, then we also have the occupational therapist, the physical therapist. We have the special language. We also have right now working with us a AmeriCorps worker who's in there. So sometimes we have, 6 adults compared to those children in there. So it can be a lot. And other times, it brings it down to the regular class size. So
When you have the, for example, the occupational therapist coming in, are they, so that's a push-in model there?
they do. They push into our model. Yeah, and it's great because she can pull over, during our station time or during our free choice time, specific kids, or if we're already sitting at the table doing a station, she can come and join us right away, and then, can kind of help the child at that time, or can pull over kids, and kind of work with them at that time. I just want to address that. Our specialists work with our children based on the needs that are identified on their IEP. They will bring in typical models because that assists progress on the goals on the IEP. If the typical models receive any benefit, we count that as incidental benefit. But the specialists are there to provide that support to those kids who are on IEPs and make progress on their goals.
Julie?
Just as a follow-up question, I would imagine that our flex time, then obviously the group size changes. What would be like a very small group, and what would be the largest number that you'd have in a flex group? Typically, I know it changes based on what you.
Well, as Carrie mentioned before, we differentiate within the core, and so a lot of times, say, for instance, if we're working on a fine motor activity, there may be 12 children that stay in the classroom. And we may have a group of, more advanced kids and kids that need a little bit more support, and then we may have maybe 3-4 kids from each classroom go into another classroom. And so those smaller groups usually range 6 to 8, and then there are usually about 3 or 4 adults in there because those are the kids that need more support.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Other questions?
Can I want to draw a little bit out here. Help us to think about how have having the PLCs in place been able to change how you've been able to prepare and interact compared to people that in other communities around the state who are trying to do the same thing with early childhood education. Just help people to get a little bit of a sense of what the differentiation is.
I I'm thrilled. I could hardly wait for you to finish your question.
Yeah, I do the straight man thing a lot.
Yeah, thanks for queuing that up.
Yeah.
Well, I know that one of the benefits that we have with having our PLC time is that we get to consider the children that are participating in our hand-in-hand preschool as all of our children. And so we look at the range of abilities from the child who is has significant disabilities, who has the one-on-one parent, to the one who's ready to go. We could not possibly address all of their needs and utilize all of our resources in a fluid manner that we're able to do if we weren't able to sit down an hour a week, look at all of that student data, consider all of our students. And what's more is we sit down and we look at the planning and the teaching that's coming up in the next week, and we're able to match children to the teaching and to the teaching spot that they're required to have. There are very few, thank you for asking, there are very few community-based preschools or public school community partnership preschools in the state that are doing flexible grouping. We are one of very few, and we have drawn some attention from certainly the early childhood special ed people at MDE because of the work that we are doing to address the needs of kids who are at risk, and also to recognize that some of our children who are identified with developmental delay and are on IEPs receive specific IEP service in some areas but require flexible grouping, general ed, enrichment in other areas, and it's a very sort of practical model to address the needs of early childhood. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful to hear. And what I love is how coherent, when we hear all these reports, is just those sort of social life skills and how addressing them with this evidence-based strategies at such an early age. I mean, last board meeting we heard about some of the efforts at the 6th grade level in using some of the response classroom, and I just think it's wonderful to have that sort of coherency across all the school districts. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like we have Sibley and Bridgewater. It's Sibley.
Well, Nancy and I worked this out. Nancy's coming from a basketball meeting, and I'm going to one. So. All right, thank you, Mr. Hillman. All right, good evening, and thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. I am going to be joined by Becky Gainey and Tanya Will to share Sibley's School Improvement Plan. Before I do, I just want to compliment the early childhood folks. They did an excellent job. And you talk about coherence and what's going on in the district. And I started writing down terms as they were talking. And I heard core instruction. I heard targeted instruction. I heard differentiation. I heard accelerated learning. I heard flexible grouping. I heard enrichment. I heard screening assessments. I heard RTI. I heard PLC. And those are all things you're going to hear in this presentation as well. And so, I mean, there is some coherence going on in our district, and that's a great thing. And I think a big piece of that goes to, is in credit to all the training that we put in from the PLC perspective, but also our problem-solving model and everything that's coming from that. So just a wonderful presentation by that group. Our presentation is going to be a bit different than presentations we've made to the board in the past. Tonight we're going to take a brief look at the 3 goals that we have for Sibley, our 2 student achievement goals and our climate goal. And then we're going to shift gears, and I'm going to do kind of the boring part. And then Tanya and Becky are going to take over and wow you.
Are you prepared to wow?
Yeah, but they're going to talk about how we meet these goals at Sibley each and every day. Our mission statement at Sibley, empowering the learner, building foundations, that's something that we share throughout the district with our elementary schools. And at Sibley, we have 3 goals. Our continuous improvement goals are in reading, math, and climate, and I'm going to touch base on those as we go through this. But those are our umbrella goals, and the reading and math goals are what our PLCs kind of build their goals around. When we look at or if you've reviewed our school improvement plan, you've seen that we are targeting 125% growth for our students. So their target growth, could be a certain point total, we're looking at that point total and looking at 125% of that, because we want our students to not only accelerate, we want them to meet their goal and then some. And we do that especially for our students who are at the 40th percentile when they start first grade. If they're at the 40th percentile when they start and they meet 100% of their target growth score every year, when they get out of 5th grade, they're still going to be at that 40th percentile. By looking at the 125% growth target, by the time they are in 5th grade, if we can look at that and accelerate to that 125%, they're going to be at that 60th percentile by the time they leave 5th grade. So we're looking at acceleration for all. Now, we support this gap, so to speak, in a number of different ways. We support through strong core instruction. We heard the early childhood folks talk about strong core instruction, and that's something that both Tanya and Becky have been supporting prior to being RTI coaches as literacy coaches and math coaches. They've been focusing on that strong core instruction. We also look at flexible grouping. You heard the last group talk about flexible grouping, and we've been benefiting from our block scheduling for a number of years now. And you guys supported that probably, 4 years ago? And at Sibley, we've been able to be in that flexible grouping mode because of that, because our schedules are blocked and our teachers, share literacy block time, they share math block time, they share specialist time, which allows them to share students during the flexible group time. And because of your support through the RTI initiative, we now are using RTI to help our students try to meet that 125% growth target. This is a lofty goal. I'm not going to lie, this is a lofty goal, but it's something that we are striving for. When you look at the accelerated growth goals, you'll see here our goal at the bottom is by the spring of 2012, 65% of our students will meet their growth, their 125% growth target. And when you look at this, our 2nd grade is in blue, our 3rd grade is in that orangish yellow, and then the light purple is 4th grade, and 5th grade is the green. And when you look at that, our 2nd graders met the 125% goal. 65% of them did in both reading and math. And then our other area was our 4th grade math that met that 65% mark. Now, when we look at the 50% mark, we see that all of our grade levels are there. When we set that goal of 65%, Dr. Jenny said that's a pretty lofty goal. You're not at that point yet. You're close to that in some areas, but you're not there. So we will, and you'll hear about this later on, we will continue to strive to meet that 65% mark. 65% of our students meeting 125% of their growth goal. But we feel pretty good about where we're at right now, with 50% of our students in all 8 areas meeting that 65% mark. A lot of percents I'm throwing at you. Does it all make sense? Yeah? Okay. Our other goal was that 20 out of 20 classrooms will meet 100% more of the classroom target growth score in the reading and math portions of the spring 2012 MAP. And what we found in both reading and math is that 19 of our 20 classrooms met that 100% growth as a class. And what that basically does is it takes all of the student scores and averages them out, and you look at what their combined percentage is. So 19 of 20 there. In the climate goal area, we looked at reducing discipline incidents by 10%. We actually reduced those by 17%, so we met that goal. We are reworking this and trying to find a better way to measure the discipline referrals. Right now we're using fix-it plan referrals, but we're going to try to find a better way to measure that over time. We are looking at a student survey that we give. We were giving it once a year. This year we're going to give it twice. But last year we were looking at the parents would give us feedback that students show respect for other students. And we're looking at a target of 90% of our parents agreeing or strongly agreeing with that. And we came up with a 94.7% on that area. So we met that goal. There is room for improvement there because we want every student to show respect for others, and that's a continuous work in progress at any school. And then the other piece, part of our staff survey, we want the morale to be high on the part of teachers, support staff, and students. We want 90% of our respondents to agree with that, and we had 97.5% of our people agreed. So we met that specific goal. Those are goals that we'll continue to work on as we progress. So this year, as we roll in, like I said, we're still going to shoot for that 65% target score as we move forward. So we're still trying to. Tanya did a great job with this PowerPoint, by the way. We're still trying to push that up as we go through. We are also using the measure of academic progress now with our first graders, and we're using parts of it with kindergartners. So what's been an interesting phenomenon, I think, in second grade is the first time students take a test, it's their first time taking the test. And I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but students would go into the computer lab to take the test the first time. This is many years ago, like probably 10, 11 years ago. And a second grade teacher said, well, how'd the test go? The student said, oh, it went really well. It went great. You know, all kinds of affirmative responses. And then the hands started coming up. What does all of the above mean? What does none of the above mean? And you know, over the course of that year, you know, you're teaching your students what that means. And now we start to do that earlier. But I think we were getting some false lows initially in second grade, just because, you know, students weren't test savvy. They didn't completely understand what they were being asked. They probably had never been exposed to a multiple choice test before, and maybe hadn't been tested on a computer before. So that's something that we're always working on, and I'm not taking anything away from our second grade teachers. They're doing a remarkable job. Our students coming in now to second grade will probably have 2 rounds of math testing that they will have done as we move forward. Again, we're looking at 20 of 20 classrooms, meeting that 100% or more of classroom target growth scores in both reading and math, so we're actually trying to fill in that part of the pie right there moving forward. And then we have 2 of these goals up this year. As I said, we're trying to do something different with the discipline referral piece, but we're actually looking at maintaining what we had before as goals in the area, in the climate area. And as I mentioned, every school is a work in progress, and every day it feels like we have different dynamics playing out in a school. And you know, we've been the recipient of many new students at Sibley, moving in from all over, and that's been a great thing. And it's also been a challenging piece because with that comes new dynamics playing out. So it's something that we will continue to work on and strive to get better at, and you know, teach students how to be respectful of others as they go about their day. The one area that we added this year is a numbers and operations strand goal, and that is specific to 5th grade. When we looked at information that Dr. Jenny had given us in regard to our MCA scores, he broke down every strand for every grade level. And when we looked at the numbers and operations, when we looked at all the strands, we were really fortunate in that we were above state average and above district average in all areas in math except this one. And in 5th grade, numbers and operations, which includes algebra, geometry, measurement, and data analysis, we were above state average but below district average. And we're looking at that going, okay, what can we do? What do we need to do to meet the needs of the students in that particular grade, in that particular strand? So that's something we're looking at, and if those of you who know Tanya and Tanya's experience in math know that she's always studying new ways to meet the needs of our students, and she's going to talk more about that as we move forward today. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya and Becky right now, and they're going to talk about how we're meeting these goals and you know, what we're building on as far as RTI, acceleration, that kind of thing.
Okay. I'm Becky, this is Tanya, if you don't know who we are. For the remainder of the presentation, we wanted to give you a peek into the workings at Sibley in the areas of teaching and learning. So we took a lot of photos these last few weeks, and we felt like this was a great way for you to see what's going on. First things first, we know we need to have a strong core curriculum. We are lucky enough to have a staff of teachers who are also lifelong learners, and they are constantly trying to better themselves by paying attention to the research and looking at their data and implementing best practices every day. At the top, you see Peg Witt with a second grade classroom doing a read aloud. We know that's a really important part of all kids' days. And then on the bottom, 2 smaller group activities where there's differentiation going on all the time. And kids in these small groups are working towards practice and sometimes enrichment.
On this slide, our school improvement goals serve as the overarching goals for the work that takes place in our PLCs. First of all, teams develop their SMART goals after examining data related to our building goals. Specific strand data or curriculum-based measures, formative and summative assessments are analyzed when pinpointing essential learnings. Teachers strive for common pacing and data-driven decision-making to create optimal learning situations for students. Here you can see a 4th grade team that's gathered together. And then on the bottom, there's a district-wide specialist team of FIED teachers. And at times, a specialist teacher or other staff member are requested to join a particular PLC for their expertise in the particular area that's related to their SMART goal. So in that top picture, there's Ann Hare, that's the back of her anyway, and she's the media specialist, and she's joined that 2nd grade team to help out with something that they're working on.
Scott touched on this a little bit. Flexible grouping is an important part and has been for the last 3 or 4 years, given our block scheduling. That's a really tight part of our workings. And here you can see Gretchen Heil in the upper left addressing a small a flex group as a whole group. And then down at the bottom, she's doing some modeling. These kids will then move into some small group rotations where they're working at literacy centers, and we know modeling is super important. And then we use our support staff to make the groups even smaller. This is Kathy Bennett's leaving with a group of kids, and then I'm pushing into a 5th grade classroom during flex time. We'll have 3 data days this year that'll take place after our benchmarking periods. These meetings occur before school and include both the grade level team and the members of the student support team. During this time, we're able to look at multiple pieces of data that are connected to the students. In this photo, you can see there's a 5th grade team that's gathered as we project MAP scores, MCA scores, and Dibble's oral reading fluency scores in a way that makes it easier for everyone to triangulate the data. From there, we have specific discussions about students to determine where support or interventions may be needed. This is not the only time we analyze data. Again, at any time, requests from PLCs, groups may warrant a visit from a school psychologist or an RTI coach to help sift through some of the numbers. The bottom photo shows me assisting a kindergarten group as they analyze some early numeracy screening results. Because we don't qualify for Title I services, differentiation remains just a really powerful tool to meet the student needs at varied levels. Differentiation is not new to teachers, but the amount of support available to assist them is new. The new RTI structure in place makes it possible to support differentiation efforts to new heights. We will see differentiation taking place within classrooms and also among grade levels as flexible groups are taught
at instructional levels. The block scheduling piece has been instrumental in supporting differentiation through these flexible groups. On this slide, Amy Pfefferly is implementing a stations approach in the upper left. And Katie Morris has students gathered around her desk on the bottom there, while at the same time on the other part of the room, kids are engaged in a game. And Mary Beth Beck, second grade teacher, has a group gathered around for a literacy strategy that they're working on.
Tanya and I are leading staff development this year with 3 areas of focus. Team building as a staff, collaboration is a huge part of what we do, and then literacy and math. These pictures showed our first staff development as a whole staff. It was based on a thing called Ways of Knowing. It's based on Keegan's Ways of Knowing, and it's an activity to help us learn how we filter ourselves and others and relationships. And so we did some self-reflection of what kind of personalities we have and how important these different personalities are for working together. And we had a lot of fun with it, and it was really successful. And after we did it with the staff, Scott asked us to extend it to do it with our educational assistants one morning. And they all came in, and we did the same activity with them. And, we just realized the importance of their jobs. They have this really interesting balance in their jobs of working with kids and staff. So that was pretty fun for us this year. Something new for us this year came out of some training we did with Kelly Braun in June. We have these building-wide goals, and then, of course, in our PLCs, we're setting SMART goals. But we decided to have, and I believe all the other schools did too, with the RTI coaches discussion, we did personal goal setting. And so each teacher at that same first staff development meeting took a look at their literacy practices and their math practices, and they decided on some goals, looking at what their needs were and what their strengths were. And these goals that they set became springboards for our cognitive coaching.
Our cognitive coaching has just been a very impactful K-12 initiative. The expertise and leadership of Sarah Swan McDonald and Kim Slagers, as well as Joel Lear and Matt Hillman, have been helpful in moving this practice to the elementary schools as well. So we are just really fortunate to have people trained at different times so that we can efficiently connect with our staff through planning, problem resolution, or reflective conversations. At this point in the year, the majority of our staff has engaged in a coaching conversation. And of those people, several have requested future sessions. I really see this as being a very important piece in maximizing individual potentials while supporting the work of our schools. Here's a photo of Melissa Reed, our school psychologist, coaching Judy Vitito. I will admit, it's a staged photo. This is completely confidential, but we had to get a photo. Okay. And then at the bottom we have the coaches that are trained at Sibley.
In our new roles as RTI coaches, we're looking for ways to best support teachers. And so here are a couple of photos of how we're doing that. Especially this fall, I've been going into some classrooms, and Tanya has too, modeling some lessons for teachers, providing resources, looking over, here she's with Amanda Schroeder and Gretchen Heil, looking over some resources that she wanted to share for math. We like to do a lot of brainstorming with teachers, kind of work alongside them. This photo on the left might be staged too, with some handsome kid, maybe 2 handsome kids. And Tanya was asked to go into a 3rd grade classroom. We had a 3rd grade teacher who just said, I'm really not happy with how my math is going. I'd like to restructure it. I'd like to think about doing some kind of small group work, more kind of like literacy centers, but moving to math centers. And so Tanya was able to help Katie figure out a way to structure her math so that she could meet the needs of kids in a better way. And then this is a picture of Melissa, and there really are kids in that room. You just can't see them, but they're sitting on the carpet, and she does a lot of observing for behaviors, for kids who need interventions in behavior.
The special education team continues to meet regularly to address the needs of students on IEPs, and the student support team is restructured this year to consist of the RTI coaches, social worker, psychologist, and principal. Now, both groups address individual student needs, but the special ed group meets student needs as outlined in an IEP, while the SST group uses the problem-solving model outlined in the RTI process to address emerging needs. The school psychologist and the social worker are part of both groups, and they ensure communication and act as a bridge between the two of them. The PLUS program occurs after school and serves about 45 students daily. This program has grown and now utilizes the expertise of 3 teachers that work to build foundational skills related to our building goals. So on the left there we have Elizabeth Valentine, who's leading a small group, while Amanda Schroeder has another group on another part of the room. At the bottom we have Katie Morris, who's helping, sort of giving some individual assistance, and then Bonnie Clam is helping a partnership there. We're also fortunate to have a plethora of Accelerate Northfield volunteers and college volunteers that regularly just fill up our school. We also have Kathy Bennett serving as our reading support staff, and new this year is Minnesota Reading Corps member Peter McGorry. As we focus on our building goals, we also face challenges within our unique population. This is truly differentiation at its finest. We look to the experts of these programs as we team together to create optimal learning situations.
Last year, these are our pieces of data that we look at alongside, and last year we started using a universal screener called AimsWeb. The district made a decision to go with Dibbles this year. We screen all students 3 times a year with Dibbles, and Scott agreed to, this is not staged, well actually it was, but he really did do this. He agreed to screen one whole class, which really helped him understand the assessment, and it was a great way to support teachers. It was really great for teachers to see him doing that. So he can speak to Dibbles because he's lived it. So we take, Dibbles is one more piece of data that we look at alongside our maps, our MCAs and OLPA, and Tanya has been doing some researching of some CBMs, which are curriculum-based measurements. We're trying to find something in the area of math so that we can find a good way to progress monitor kids in math. Dibbles is what's used also to progress monitor our Tier 2 students. The last couple of years, we've really been researching interventions, trying out interventions. This year, we're practicing some interventions. I feel like, I think Tanya and I both believe that we have to test out the validity of some of these things rather than just pulling things off of the internet. And so we're really experimenting with them and able to speak to teachers about what our discoveries are, which ones are good. So this is a picture of April Osterman, who's doing a fact fluency incremental rehearsal with a student, and there I am with a student doing Great Leaps Reading, which came out of Minnesota Reading Corps. And then this picture you can't see very well, but that is an integrity check. Each intervention will have an integrity check to ensure that the intervention is being implemented correctly. As we look ahead, we're thinking about the areas of literacy and math and staff development. In literacy, we always look back to the data and look at trends. We're looking at our core instruction. We know that we need to strengthen our nonfiction focus, and we also are really hot on building vocabulary and word knowledge. We just had some training from Lori Mack on Wednesday before Thanksgiving break, and that's really got people sparked. We're really working at implementing interventions and making that process friendly to teachers, things that work for kids. This is the first year for implementing Common Core standards. That's been a big project. Last year, the District Language Arts took our frameworks and embedded the Common Core standards with those frameworks. So we're feeling pretty good about that, but we have lots of work to do in that area. I have been doing some exploration with oral language with our youngest learners. We're seeing a significant increase in kids who are qualifying for language services. And so we've been doing some things in kindergarten just to kind of understand that and wrap our heads around that. And we're looking at a new text leveling system so that we can make sure we know kids are reading books at their appropriate level.
In the area of math, as we're looking at strengthening the core instruction, we're bringing a level of automaticity to our students so that they can be fluent in math, really taking a look at that fact fluency piece. We're also raising our awareness and skills for addressing both conceptual knowledge and procedural knowledge as they relate to math. We are introducing modeling and supporting staff as they address student needs through interventions. And as Becky mentioned, just really trying to test out the interventions that we come across to see how they're working with our students. We're working together with the elementary RTI coaches. We just are continuing to research potential progress monitoring systems for math. New at Sibley this year is Celebrate Math Week. It's going to be on January 14th through the 16th, and our plan is to emphasize math skills and concepts as we engage in a number of math-related activities. We're exploring collaboration with colleges, community, and parents as we are recognizing math at work in the world around us. We're putting together some volunteer math bins. Like right now, we're doing that. Trying to get some pieces together there that are intended to streamline and supply teachers with resources and easy-to-use math activities for volunteers, much like the literacy bins that were created last year. As far as staff development goes, we have had some really great opportunities for staff development. It is just such an important part of our continued learning. We will continue to share with our building staff the key points that we learned as we attended the Midwest Instructional Leadership Council. The timely focus of RTI at this conference has certainly helped guide us in our local efforts here. As far as cognitive coaching goes, we'll continue to utilize this practice as a means for growth among our staff. As our elementary coaches work together under the guidance of Mary Hansen, Director of Teaching and Learning, we'll continue to guide the foundational work related to response to intervention in a way that provides consistency across the elementary schools. And our staff development experience will address team building as an important aspect that will allow us to continue to work in a spirit of collaboration. As far as partnerships go, we actually have good general support from parents, but we're starting to examine some potential for focused efforts in these partnerships. So, thank you for the opportunity to share our school improvement plan and as well as sort of our current happenings and future plans. So, if you have any questions or comments?
Board members, questions? Anne?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see the differentiation in action across the board. And I'm wondering about the flexible groups, how the kids respond to that, and what's it like as you're shifting them around for different skills? If you could just talk about that a little bit.
They are so used to it. I mean, we do it in really 1st through 5th. Kindergarten is just, it doesn't give us the opportunity to, although they're differentiating all the time when kids are working in centers and things, but they're really quite used to it, and they move around. I mean, it's called flexible grouping for a reason because we're looking at the numbers all the time and moving kids to where they need to be. So, I mean, it's just always happening. So I think they're used to it, and I think we've been doing it now for 3 or 4 years. So.
Great, that's great.
John?
In one of the other presentations, we heard some issues or difficulties in terms of doing the flexible grouping along with the Compañeros students in the English-only classrooms. Has that been a challenge at Sibley, or is that not an issue that you've had difficulty with?
Because of our block scheduling, it really hasn't been. We've been able to make it work, and we are choosing to move forward with math instruction in English, of course, because all of our students are in that know that language, understand that language. But it just takes some careful planning on the front end. But if you look at a Compañeros classroom right now, and you compare it to a contemporary classroom, you're going to see the same minutes of instruction in literacy. You're going to see the same number of minutes of instruction in math. There's going to be a lot of consistency, and a big part of that is simply because we have the literacy initiative going on, in Compañeros, and that's all the way up through 3rd grade right now. The other piece for us is the fact that we have one Compañeros class at every grade level. We don't have more than one, so we're able to really make that work, and it hasn't been an issue for us. It takes some careful planning, but it hasn't necessarily been an issue.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Julie?
Thank you. This was so fun. I mean, you go through site improvement plan and you look at it and it's so many numbers, and then you get to see this and it's so fun because you actually see how it's happening. And last week in DPAC, we were treated to understanding RTI at Bridgewater by Hope Langston and Connie Nelson and 2 others on the team, Melissa Reed and Melissa Larson, and similar presentation in terms of really the nuts and bolts. So this was really awesome. 2 questions. What is the time that flex groups are meeting on a weekly basis at Sibley? Are you still calling it Build and Boost?
It really depends.
Okay.
Every grade level has a different name for it.
Okay.
But anywhere from, I'd say, 30 to 45 minutes per grade level. And some grades are doing it 4 days a week. Some grade levels are doing it 5 days a week. It really depends on the grade level. It's something they decide. They incorporate that in where they can. And our scheduling process has really evolved. It's nothing like middle school or high school scheduling process goes. But what we do is our grade level teams select a morning literacy block and an afternoon literacy block, and then a math block that's opposite of that. And then we go through and select when, who is going to have literacy blocks in the morning, who's going to have literacy blocks in the afternoon. So we stagger them throughout the day, both literacy and math. And then we go in and we look at the flexible grouping time for that grade level, so we don't have all of our grade levels flexibly grouping at the same time. So if we do have services that we can push in, as Tanya and Becky talked about, like a Kathy Bennett's or somebody like that, they are available at those times. And that also really does help our special ed from the scheduling perspective. When not all of the literacy blocks are at the same time, it helps our English language learner program as far as their scheduling goes. So the block scheduling has helped us in just so many ways. But because of that, we're able to make sure that we stagger things.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say one more thing about that.
Like, for instance, right now, 2nd grade is doing both. Their flex grouping time is 5 days a week, and they're doing 3 days of literacy, 2 days of math. That's how they choose to do it all year long. But 4th grade just finished up with 4 weeks of a math flex group, and now they've moved into a literacy flex group. So teams can decide what works for them and have a little bit of flexibility with that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's really based on the data and where they see the specific needs. So if they see a need in a specific strand, they'll take a look at that. But I think in the end last year when we finished the year, everybody was splitting their time between literacy and math. But they start the year in different ways, and that's the beauty of it. It evolves based off of the needs.
Thank you.
So I had two questions, if there's no other questions. So my first question has to do with the data. So I'm curious about the 50% and the goal of I love having that reach goal of 65%. And I'm wondering, you started out, Scott, talking about how trying to reach those kids that are at 40 percentile, so that when they get to 5th grade, they're not at 40th percentile. And I'm wondering if you have a sense of those that are meeting that 125% goal, if some of those are falling in that category, or if I'm also wondering if there's a ceiling effect, like you have students that are really pretty accelerated and it's hard to get 125% if they're, on the other end of the scale. So I don't know if you can speak at all to that.
Well, I think the beauty of that map that we're using to measure is that it really does predict growth. And some students might have a growth goal of 4 points, or others may have a growth goal of 7 points. It takes a lot into consideration. And I think we have students in every quartile who are meeting the 125% target growth score. I don't think we have any consistency either way, as far as we don't have anybody, just our upper quartile or just our lower quartile students who are moving in that direction. So we're seeing it all over.
Great. And then my second question is really a point of clarification. So at DPAC, one of the things that was discussed was the power of the RTI model. You've been talking about it for all learners, which is really lovely to hear. But this was focused on referrals for special ed and the reduction, and I wanted to know if you could repeat those numbers for us. Do you remember? Was it from last year was about 12 around this time of year, and now it's about 1 or something?
Yeah,
like that?
I think, have we referred anyone?
Anyone? Okay.
Yeah, we've maybe referred 1. We meet every Friday morning, and I look at it, we've made some pretty significant interventions, along the way, and one of them just was moving a student from one particular classroom to another classroom, and I called it the ultimate intervention, and it was just basically there were some things playing out with other students in the class, and we looked at that and thought, this is something that we really need to try, and we did, and so far that's working out. But I would say the special ed referrals, Melissa's our psychologist who was at DPAC, and I mean, whatever she reported, it might be 1, and if she's telling you it was 12
It's either
last
1
year,
or 0.
Yeah, she said it was something that had been established last year, so she didn't know whether to count it as 0 or 1. So.
It could be, and I think that the problem-solving model that Melissa and Tanya and Becky are bringing to the table, from their work, as they reference their work with Mary and Gary and the other RTI coaches and psychologists, has been really beneficial. And it's something that's new, so it's going to be somewhat uncomfortable, for people when they bring a recommendation to the table. But what's different about this year is that people are walking away with a plan, and they're walking away knowing, classroom teachers are walking away knowing that it's not all falling on their shoulders. What you're getting or what you're seeing is Tanya and Becky and Melissa supporting what the ideas that they're giving, and I'll be in your room at this time, or I'll work on some type of reading intervention or math intervention with you. It's not something that you're going to be pushed away and you have to work on it in isolation. So that's been extremely beneficial for folks. And do they all work? No, they don't. But what they're doing is trying different things along the way and finding something that fits. And they're problem solvers, and it's just been fantastic to watch. As it's played out. Just this first not even third of the school year.
That's what I think is amazing, is that you're only a third of the way in, and the stories are great.
Well, what I was going to add to what Scott said too is, this is a paradigm shift for people. This is a biggie for people who have been in education for a while. For kids who struggle, it was like, oh, that was our only answer with special ed, and so it's exciting to see RTI coming and we're talking to teachers and saying, no, we're going to exhaust every possibility for this kid. And if we don't see progress and we don't see the numbers moving, then we're going to try something else. And we're going to, the kids that do get referred for special ed, we're pretty sure that they're probably going to qualify because we have taken them through a lot of interventions and we know, what their needs are. So it's exciting to be a part of it.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to Bridgewater. And board members, you should have had in your table file the PowerPoints from Bridgewater.
Okay, thank you so much. You're going to see many similarities, obviously, because we're working on similar initiatives, and then you'll see some differences as there are differences between the buildings as well. So, to begin with, obviously we're Bridgewater here. Our mission statement is shown, and this is all that's been in the site improvement plan that was given to you beforehand as well. Same thing with our vision. One of the things we want to highlight is the fact that we do use a continuous improvement model, just like any other business would use, but we do use data to support all the decisions that are made along the way. We want to make sure we set the appropriate targets, and we also make sure that there's integrity in the targets that we set. We look at interventions along the way, make sure we implement interventions, not just admire the problem, but we do something about the problem. And then we check along the way to see, is it working? If it's not working, we need to change gears on that so that we make sure that it is working. This past summer, we were recognized for the second year in a row as a reward school, and that was wonderful, very powerful. And we did spend the time celebrating with the staff. It was nice to have that celebration. But as you all know, staying at that level takes work. So, bottom line, the party's over. It's time to start working again, and that's kind of where we're at. And I'm going to have Hope Langston go through our math goal, and then Connie Nelson will go through our reading goal, and I'll wrap it up with our climate goal this evening.
I'm a little bit shorter. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about our goals for last year in math. Our objective was that all students will demonstrate measurable gains in math. We did that using our MCA data and our MAP scores. Our goals were that all of our classrooms would meet 100% or more of their classroom target growth score on the spring 2012 MAP, and that all subgroups would meet AYP based on the math MCA. The good news is that all of our classrooms did meet that goal, and all subgroups made AYP. So we can check that one off. Looking at this year, we sat down with our building leadership team. We tweaked our goal a little bit, our objective, that all students will demonstrate growth toward grade level proficiency or above using the MCA and the math assessments. What that comes down to, and this is going to be a little bit different, so interrupt me if you have any questions. Our goal now is that 90% of all of our students K through 5 will meet their individual growth targets. So no longer are we using a classroom average. We decided that we were going to take it down a level to the student level, to the individual student level, where you would be able to identify each child's growth and not have it be a part of an average target. We know that this is a challenge. Our teachers are on board with it, and we believe we're going to reach that goal. Our proficiency levels for the MCA, we are shooting for 80% in grade 3, 85% in grade 4, and 70% in grade 5, and I'll explain how we came up with those numbers. We are continuing with our goal that all subgroups will meet AYP. Our current reality on the MCA this year, if you look in the 2011-2012 column, 79.17% of our third graders were meeting or exceeding standards. Again, we're upping that to 80. 85% of our fourth graders were proficient. I'm using the Wisconsin term proficient, but here it's meets or exceeds. We're shooting for 85% in 5th grade, almost 70, and we're going to shoot for 70 again. So that's where we're at now and where we want to go. For our MAP testing, in math, we were at 82% of our kids meeting target growth. It's a goal of ours that every student would meet their individual target growth. From kids who struggle to kids who are well above the grade level average. It would be that every child should meet their growth. So we are upping that to 90% of our student body. Again, it is something that's going to require a lot of work, but our staff is up for the challenge, and we're going to go for it. To achieve our goals, and I'm not going to go through every one of these, I just want to highlight a few. We have, as you can see, many steps that we're planning to take. We also have data days where we're walking through each child at each grade level with our staff. We have already started MCA math specification training. Roger's helped us a lot with that. Through the OLPA testing, there's some great resources online through the state education department, the Learning Navigator, which allows teachers to really target what student needs are based on their OLPA results.
Help them with OLPA.
Yeah, well, the OLPA actually identifies where their needs are.
And OLPA is an online
help them
practice.
with OLPA. It's
test.
the local practice.
Yes.
We just finished testing all of our third through 5th graders. It's an optional local purpose assessment, so you can take it. It's actual test items, and the students get a taste of the real life testing situation, allowing teachers to kind of understand where their students are right now in terms of their math needs.
The students can take it twice.
Yes.
Before they take the actual MCA in the spring.
Exactly.
But unlike last year where they could have taken an MCA test earlier, it isn't allowed to count as the final test.
Right. Let's see. Homework help is happening right now before school. Again, a great program for kids who need extra help. Math events occurring. We've had moms in math in 1st grade, which had a huge attendance, fantastic turnout, and we're looking at some other grade level events to again highlight math in the kids' lives, and to bring parents on board and to support the whole mathematical process with their child. We are looking at different math interventions, working together with the 2 other RTI coaches that are focusing on math to look at developing and trying out some interventions that work best for kids, and working with our new teachers just to support them as they implement everyday math as part of their core curriculum. Number 9 is pretty cool. And next time you're in Bridgewater, we have our foster grandmothers have put up these lovely vocabulary cards that are all over the 3rd through 5th grade wing. So the kids are seeing them multiple times every day. And we are using the SST process, as I mentioned, just to track individual student data and then reviewing those with PLCs. Number 12, interestingly enough, we found that some of our children were being tested in an environment that didn't quite match their needs. So we want to look at individual kids' needs for giving them the MCA. And last but not least, using the iPad for math apps, and that's happening now, and we're finding some really neat apps that are available to help kids progress in math. This, I know some of you have already seen both of these, but these are some examples of math interventions in action. What we are choosing to do at Bridgewater is do targeted math interventions for skill deficits that have been identified for students. So, for instance, a child might be in 5th grade and not know how to add with exchanging or subtract with regrouping, or some other basic skill that just they missed or did not become proficient in along the way. So that's the graphing on the left is their progress monitoring for a particular math skill. And then the one on the right is introducing the concept of self-monitoring for students who maybe have a procedural problem that they just need to learn to check for. And it's really like a little checklist that they use every time they solve a problem, and then gradually they internalize that and do not need that anymore. So those are just two ways that we're addressing individual student needs through the intervention process of Bridgewater. I'm going to turn it over to Connie.
Okay, I'm going to talk about our second objective, which is a literacy one. And you'll see up here what our objective was this past year. All students will demonstrate measurable gains in reading fluency and comprehension. Last year, our goals were that all classrooms will meet 100% or more of the classroom target growth scores. And I believe that was explained pretty well by Scott. The second one, whoops, Nancy, sorry, I missed an editing spot there, in grades 3 through 5, not 305. So that was my job. I'm sorry I didn't do that very well. Anyway, those were our two SMART goals last year. So these are our results. On the first one, we had 15 of 16 classrooms that met 100% or more, and we did not quite meet that one. However, all of our subgroups did make AYP, which we're very proud of. So our new objective is all students will demonstrate growth toward grade level proficiency or above in reading as measured by the MCA and math assessments. And that's similar to our math objective this year in that we're highlighting individual performance rather than classroom performance. So our goals are that 85% of all students in grades K through 5 will meet their individual growth target on the spring 2013 reading map test. And then proficiency levels on MCA will be as follows. And you can see each grade level we've indicated 80% as a proficiency goal. And I'll explain that, how we came up with that in just a second. And then all subgroups will meet AYP standards. Okay, this was our current reality in reading. As you can see, all three grades hovered around that 80% plus in the MCA proficiency. We did reduce our goal a little bit because we've been forewarned by Roger that the test is going to be somewhat more rigorous this spring. MAP testing, 65% of students met their individual growth target on the spring reading map, and that measures their growth from fall to spring. You may wonder why only 65%, and I guess we need to clarify that that doesn't indicate how many were proficient. We had far higher percentage of students that were proficient on the map. However, when it came to their individual growth targets, it was somewhat less. In looking at that data a little more carefully, some of those would be our higher end students that maybe it was a little more challenging for them to make that growth target, but that's going to be a real emphasis of ours this year, is to really get those children performing up to their growth potential. 85% of all students will meet their individual growth target on the spring reading map, measuring growth from fall to spring. So it's quite a jump from our current reality to what our goal is. Our action plan, I'll just highlight a few of these. Of course, we'll continue looking at reading data. That's become very commonplace. I remember years ago when data was kind of a scary new word. So now it's just something we do routinely. Number 2, this is where RTI is playing a big role. We really are trying to help our underachieving students by offering interventions to the teachers to work with these students. And as Becky and Tanya indicated, we too are feeling it's very important for us to
not only model the interventions, but also to try them out with these students first to make sure that they're effective and work out the kinks. Some of these are ones you've seen before. We did start our homework help. Number 8, using DIBELS as a universal screener for all students is new this year. In September, we went in and we tested all of our students. We got it done pretty quickly by just kind of swarming classrooms. And this will take place again in January and then again in the spring. I think January will really tell us how well we're doing with our interventions, and also will let us know what we have to change up and what we need to really get busy on. 180 continues as a great intervention and total literacy program for 15 of our most struggling 4th and 5th grade students in reading. There's that word flexible grouping again. You've heard a lot about that tonight. Certainly that's one area that we think will help serve our high-performing students. And number 11, as RTI coaches, all 6 of us are spending a great deal of our time creating and then implementing those interventions. And I believe Hope mentioned that we've received some training and we'll continue to take a look at the reading specs. I was at a PLC last week, and that's exactly what they were doing. They were looking at the reading and math specs and working on lesson plans where they could incorporate those. iPad apps, that's been really fun to see too. Our Title I teachers are using iPads to the max. We had a couple extra ones, and so we've offered them to them, and they just grabbed onto those. And I was in a Title I room today, and the kids were really using them very appropriately, I might add. And then finally, oral reading fluency. That's something we hear about more and more. And research shows us, and there are more and more correlation studies on how much oral reading fluency impacts comprehension and reading achievement in general. And we have just a few pictures to share with you. We hear a lot about those students who need extra scoops. And here's some examples of a title group and also a student who's doing some extra reading. That's part of the Read 180 program. We also have volunteers at Bridgewater. We're trying to do a better job of training these volunteers and really helping them by giving them some just little things to hold on to help remind them of some good prompts to use with children. Accelerate Northfield has been a great thing this year for us also. We do not have Minnesota Reading Corps, so we've tapped into Accelerate Northfield and also the foster grandparent program. And those have both helped us out a lot. This shows Accelerate Northfield volunteers working with students. We now have 4 foster grandmas. They're wonderful. They come every day. They're very dependable. They love working with students. They're scheduled from 8:30 till 12:30 every day, actually 4 days a week. I have to share with you one of the grandmas who's probably had some struggles and hardships. After 3 days of working with students, came into our office and she just said, she said, it's just amazing how much better you can feel about yourself when you're helping some children. And that was pretty touching to hear that. And I'll turn it over to Nancy.
Our foster grandmas have been just outstanding. It's been amazing. We got one foster grandma, Melissa Grimmer, called and said, would you like a foster grandma? It's like, well, yeah, of course. And so she brought in Grandma Linda, and so Grandma Linda started, and all of a sudden Grandma Linda went home and she talked to her friends. And all of a sudden we got Grandma Karen and Grandma Diane, and then Melissa came back again and said, would you like another grandma? It's like, sure, why not? Bring me another one. So it's been great. They've been multiplying. And they do great work. It's amazing to see the talent in these ladies, and they still want to utilize their talents with kids, and they love it. You know, some of the grandmas are like, I just want to work with the little ones, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I wouldn't mind working with third graders. Well, fifth graders are fine. It's like, yes, they all are fine. So it's amazing to have that relationship and that partnership that really is helping students and also helping the grandmas, because the first day they came in, it was, they were kind of apprehensive, and now they leave there's a skip in their step, and they're on out the door waiting for the next day and asking, can I work more hours? Well, of course you can. We'd be glad to have you. So it's been amazing. I love that relationship. Our climate goal, last year our climate goal was all students and staff will promote a respectful, safe, and welcoming environment. And our goals were, we want our conference attendance has always been high, but we want to keep our conference attendance at about 95% by one or both parents. And I did give the students a challenge this fall. I said, if we have a 100% conference attendance by one or both parents, I will wear a live snake on morning announcements. I'm not wearing that snake quite yet, but we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks here. I was going to look for myself a little baby python or something of that nature. Our other goal was we want parents to agree that they're informed about their child's progress. We want students to agree that they're kind, helpful, courteous, polite, and treat others the way they would want to be treated. Staff agreeing that they're supportive of their colleagues, and staff agreeing that they contribute to a positive climate at Bridgewater. We did meet our conference attendance goal. We met the goal of our parents agreeing that they're informed about their child's progress. We met our goal with students. The one goal that we did not meet was the one on staff, and I'm still perplexed about this one, trying to figure out how we go between the last two ones, having 100% of staff that agree that they contribute to a positive climate, but yet 94% agreeing that they're supportive of their colleagues. So we have a little bit to work on there, but I think that gives us some room to stretch. Our goals for this year, again, we want conference attendance to be at or above 95%. We want to reduce the number of fix-it plans we have by 10%. And again, we want 95% of the parents to agree that they're informed of their child's progress, 93% of students agreeing that they followed the Bridgewater behavior guidelines of work, respect, belong, and safety. And again, for staff, 95% of staff agreeing that they're supportive of their colleagues and that they promote a positive climate. Action plans, I'll highlight a few there. The first goal there in implementing PBIS, I'm not sure if we'll get it totally implemented this year, but one of the things I'd like to see us work toward is bridging the gap between responsive classroom and PBIS, which is positive behavior intervention strategies. We support character traits on morning announcements every morning. We have a character trait of the week. For example, this week our character trait is friendship. And so each day of the week, then I give the students an example of what that friendship character trait means, and so that they can find ways that they can become that character trait. I like to emphasize their character traits that they use at school, they use on the bus, they use at home, they use on the playground, all the different locations that they're at as well. We'll have DARE again, and we've had our kindness retreat for fourth graders. And we switched, on number 5, we switched from doing our Thrilling Thursday breakfasts because our attendance at each of those was going down. And so we looked to provide a different format. And the staff have been wonderful coming up with different ideas. As you heard about, the first grade team planned for Moms in Math presentation. The second grade team planned they did popcorn and parents. So they had a whole event where they invited parents in, and they had popcorn with the kids, and they provided different center activities for the students. Third grade had speakers come in. They had retired nurse Rhea Miller come in with some healthy tips, and then they asked Pastor Will Healy to come in and provide some strategies on parenting as well. So fourth and fifth grade are yet to come, and I know that first grade has also planned another event just for dads. So not to leave dads out of the equation, because that's really important as well. So that's been well attended, and I think well received by parents as well. So it's something different than the normal format that we've had. Obviously, we've continued with our bus driver appreciation breakfast. We're still utilizing our conference reports and report cards, and that's really helped in our ways to inform parents of how their children are doing in class. Communicating with staff and getting our teachers trained in responsive classroom has been great. Skylar has been a wonderful tool, and I can't thank Dr. Richardson and Matt Hellman for bringing that to us as a tool we can use with our parents. It's nice to be able to inform many parents in very few minutes. And recently we had an incident where we had to inform parents, and it was the feedback from parents was it was nice to have that consistent communication, that I didn't have to wait till I got home to get something in the backpack. I got it when I was at work, so that they knew what was going on, what we were doing. So that's been very helpful. I send a Friday update every single Friday, just giving parents highlights of what's been going on during the week, or if there's events that are coming up, I can let parents know of those events as well. So that's been just an incredible tool to be able to use. And again, we'll monitor our fix-it plans and implement behavior interventions as needed. Some of the things that we've done. Last week we held our first ever Grandparents' Day. We had about 325 grandparents that attended. We invited grandparents in to come play board games with their children, and this was the day before Thanksgiving break. So many grandparents were already in the area coming down to visit their grandchildren. Very well attended, and a fun event for kids, and non-pressure for teachers, non-pressure for grandparents as well. Some grandparents gave us some ideas as far as things they want to see from next year. Had one grandma said, "I want to see more technology." Alrighty then, we'll make sure that happens. So that's been really fun. Our Veterans Day Assembly, many of you were there. That's just been a really nice tradition that we have had in place, and it's really nice to hear from all the veterans afterward. It's very touching to see the number of veterans walking out of the gym with tears in their eyes, and then you've made a difference then, and it's very, very meaningful. And then our bus driver appreciation breakfast. That's been, again, many of you were there. Some of you weren't there, but I know you had a candidate form to attend. Next year we'll get you there. And that's just one of those things where you hear the drivers, if you listen to them on the radio during the week when we have the breakfast, they're chattering back and forth with each other to make sure they're all coming. And even the one driver that couldn't attend this year, she made sure to send her order because she wanted to make sure she had her potatoes. So we got her potatoes. And bottom line, this quote from Fred Rogers basically says that we have more in common than we do differences. And we need to emphasize the things that we have in common and not always focus on all of our differences. And one of my quotes that out of the book Wonder is always try to be a little kinder than is necessary. If we can get all of our kids and all of our people to do that, the world would be a better place. And again, we believe in the children of the Northfield District, and we thank parents for partnering with us to educate students, and together we can perform miracles. And at this time, we'll take questions.
Board members? Comments or questions? I have one. Ann?
With these great reports today, I think it would be really nice. I was thinking of how do you set the growth that you want a child to have? And I'm sure there are different ways to do that, but any one of you could address that question.
It's usually done individually. With the MAP assessment, that program will do it automatically, so that if a child scores at a certain level, a certain RIT score, it will set their growth target for them. And again, with many of these, it's done all individually, not done just as a group, but breaking it down to the individual child. Because if you're performing at that highest level, we can't expect you to grow 14 points.
Right.
We might be able to expect you to grow 4, but not 14. And again, if you're at a lower level, the expectation is that you have a lot further to grow. But again, we've got to look at what's realistic. Is a child who comes in and they're not able to, their English speaking skills is not at a grade level proficiency. Can we expect them to grow 14 points or 21 points as what's expected? I don't think so. We need to allow them that time to grow. So again, it really comes down to the individual student.
And so the teachers would maybe look at what the gross, score the computer came up with how they're answering the questions. Then do they tweak it a bit because they know other information?
Absolutely.
So they'll say, oh, well, maybe that this person has these complications and maybe it should be 2 points lower, or I think they can go 4 points higher or something.
But again, making sure we keep high standards for all students, because I don't think and that's the kind of the quandary we get into. I want to make sure that we expect high standards from all students, but at the same time be realistic. So if the growth target says, oh yeah, you should grow 21 points, and I know that these are the challenges this child has, let's make sure we set their target appropriate, but still keep it so they stretch themselves.
That's a lot of work.
It is. It is. teachers these days, it's not like it used to be. Carrie?
I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to comment at how pleased I am to see that focus on individual target growth for each student, because I think this is sort of the piece of RTI that the community has not yet really fully understood, is that it serves children across the entire spectrum, and that you are you use RTI to challenge those students who are already highly successful to push them even farther. I think the community has really focused on, as I think we all do care so much about the kids who are really struggling, and that is one of the great strengths of RTI. But I think it's really important, and you've really done it in your plan here to focus on students across the entire spectrum to make sure that those highly achieving students are still pushed to achieve even more.
We want to make sure that all the resources we have in our district are utilized with all of our students, not just with one group or another. And it's really important for the acceleration of all students, not just your struggling students. But my belief is that the students who are at the high level deserve the same amount of attention as a student who's struggling, as a student in the middle. So trying to, again, individualize that so that wherever your developmental level is at, or wherever your learning level is at, will take you right from there and grow you, not stifle you, not utilize you to be the extra teacher. No, that's our job to do the teaching. It's your job to do the learning, and we want to make sure that all students are learning.
Thank you for the presentation. It was similar to Sibley's in that you really got to how much work is really going to be required to reach all those target goals. So it was really good to see. I wanted to touch on responsive classroom for a minute because you brought it up. And a couple questions. How many of your classroom teachers are trained in responsive classroom?
Oh, good question. I would say, oh boy, I don't have a specific number off the top of my head. I would say we probably have at least 10 to 12 of our teachers that are trained.
And I know it's very early on in learning PBIS, but I was just curious what some of your initial thoughts are on how you think responsive classroom and PBIS will ultimately sort of mesh.
Well, that's going to be our job this year, trying to figure out how those two are going to be, how we can blend those two together, because you have one system that likes to put rewards in place, and one system that likes to have those intrinsic rewards. And I for one, I'm not into rewarding kids for doing what they should be doing. I want them to want to do what they should be doing, and feel good about the fact that I'm following the behavior guidelines that we have put in place for them, and they feel good about that, and they know that the benefits of that are a better society overall, not just, okay, well, yeah, I did it today, where's my piece of candy for that? I don't want us to get down to that, because that doesn't lead to success down the road. So I want kids to be able to own their own behavior. And so those are some of the things that we're ironing out this year, is how do we meld those two things together so that we can have kids behaving positively and actually feeling good about what they do.
Okay, thank you.
No?
With the enthusiasm and support that you have, that we see tonight from both Sibley and Bridgewater, it's not a surprise then to us that you see such good results at the middle and high school. So thank you for your report, and thank you for your support.
You bet. Thank you, and thank you for your continued support. I really appreciate it. And thanks for this opportunity tonight. Any extra words from my two magicians over here? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we have our final iPad minute, is that right?
And it's 4.5 minutes, we understand, approximately.
Hold on a moment, Matt.
But we also thought we actually had individuals that were going to come and present tonight their iPad minute, and we said, we're not going to make you sit for an hour and a half to do your 4.5 minute presentation. So Matt has skillfully captured the moments, And,
I'm not sure skillfully
how
is the
skillful?
right word, but
I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Matt. We
I am
haven't turned it
certainly
on
no
yet.
Spielberg. But for those of you who know me, understand that I have a little bit of enthusiasm, and after those last 3 presentations, I cannot wait to come to work tomorrow. What a great place, and we sometimes forget that. So, kudos to all 3 presentations; they were awesome. Tonight's iPad Minute, 4 minutes, 39 seconds. Amy Allen, Katrina Meehan, Life Science teachers, 7th grade, and I will let them do the talking. Oops. Katrina's going to run the app from here, and Amy's going to come over to the big screen.
So the nice thing about this app is that it allows us to have students virtually dissect a frog without the expense of purchasing frogs, and it also takes away the smell that students get very distracted by. And lastly, some students really don't maybe agree with the use of frogs in this manner, so if they philosophically are opposed to it, doing it virtually really gets around that. So for that reason, we're really looking forward to trying out the dissection app this year. So Ms. Meehan is modeling how to dissect virtually, and you can see that the organs are easily displayed. Students have the ability to lift up organs and look inside at different body systems and virtually dissect the frog. In addition, they can click on specific organs like the lung, and they can learn not only a bit about the frog lung, but it also compares and contrasts it to humans. So the app explains how the organ in a frog is both similar to and different than that in probably a human. It's the same thing for small intestine. So another thing that you can do with this is to compare and contrast body systems. So here it shows a frog versus a human, and here it shows circulatory system. So again, it's something that you can't easily do in a lab. You can't open up a person. So here you can see what you're looking at virtually by clicking, and then you can contrast it to a person. It's very visual. It's a really easy way for kids to understand how those systems might be similar. In addition to using this in our human body unit, we also can use this app later on when we learn about adaptations and animals. So this one is, these are frog videos, and they show different adaptations. There you go. So you can look at different structures that animals have that allows them to be successful in finding food. And students can also learn about types of frogs. Not only do we do an animal unit, but throughout the school year we learn about nature drilling and getting outdoors and making observations, both quantitative and qualitative observations, forming inferences. So students might be seeing things out in the woods that they're curious about, and we also learn about adaptations and ways that these frogs would survive winter, for example. And in the app, it describes that when the weather gets too cold, they bury themselves and stay frozen for weeks. And we talk a bit about the physiology of that as we go through the school year, different strategies that animals have for surviving cold temps. So for that reason, we think that there are lots of ways you can use this. You can quiz yourself at the end and see how well you've learned, and that way we can better individualize instruction.
I have one question for Amy and Katrina, both of you. This app seems to have a number of levels of Bloom's taxonomy involved, from the knowledge base all the way up where you're talking about creating inferences when you're getting out into a lab situation, but using this as a background. How would you characterize the range of levels that you can use this with for Bloom's?
I would say that it does lend itself well to differentiation, and certainly knowledge, comprehension, I think application, and a little bit of evaluative. You can do an interactive activity that you can kind of see if you get the pathway on the screen map showing, you can trace yourself the pathway that food would travel. Kind of show you that it doesn't go through every single organ that was in that dissection? I would probably self-check me.
Sure.
Just the first three.
Great.
I think some analysis of two comparing to human to frog.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you. If you don't know those two ladies, they are rock stars. I mean, they are truly. And I really kind of think this is a cool ending to this evening of presentations because the point of response to intervention is to prepare children to access the general ed curriculum throughout their regular career. So many kids struggle in science and social studies and other courses at the secondary because they don't have the foundational reading and mathematics skills to be able to interact with the curriculum. The things that we're doing at the elementary are setting us up for more success at the secondary level. It is a very comprehensive and cohesive piece. The other component that I love about this is we heard a lot tonight about data, which is awesome. Data informs us. But this starts to take the data and those foundational skills and transition it toward the higher order thinking skills that we know students need to succeed in the knowledge economy. So you've really seen the entire continuum of skills tonight. And they did a great job putting the cherry on top of the sundae here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Well said.
All right. We are ready to move on to our first item for individual action, which I believe is more good news.
Yes, and Stephanie is going to talk to us about the bond sales today and the impact that that's going to have on our property taxpayers over the next 11 or so years.
Yeah, and actually, maybe I just shut myself off. Actually, I'm going to introduce Heather Casperson, who is the senior managing consultant from PFM, who's helped us with our refunding sales. Today, this morning at 10:30, we solicited bids with the help of Heather for refunding 2 issues, and I'll turn it over to Heather to explain what the results were from those sales.
Great. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Heather Casperson. As Stephanie said, I'm with Public Financial Management, working as the district's financial advisor. So what we did today is, as Stephanie was saying, we had 2 bond issues out for competitive sale, and I believe you have in front of you a recommendation letter and some sale results. So I'll just kind of briefly hit some of the points. Initially, we went out with bond sizes of $10 million for general obligation, alternative facility refunding bonds. Those bonds are going to be advance refunding 2 different bond issues that you have outstanding. One is 2004A, the other is 2005A. And we received 8 bids for those 2012 bonds. And we were able to reduce the bond issue size. Sometimes this gets confusing because we do resize after the bids are taken so that we can right size the bond issue for you. So we were able to reduce the $10 million to a bond size of $9,825,000. And the best bid came from Stiefel Nicholas and Company at a true interest rate of a 1.41%. These are phenomenal results, and I want to just take a moment to also congratulate you because in conjunction with the bond issues, the district also has the general obligation debt rated, and so you have a rating from Standard & Poor's, and your rating was affirmed as a AA+. This is a very high rating. That is something you should be proud of. It reflects the fiscal management of the board and the superintendent and your finance staff. So I just really want to take a moment to let you know that that is really great. So you should be proud of that. And what that does is because you have a high credit rating, it will reduce your borrowing costs, and that's why we were able to secure these wonderful bids. You can see, I mean, getting 8 bids in and of itself is really fantastic. And I just want you to know that this is really reflective not only of that market that we have, but it's also your credit rating. So the second issue that was for competitive sale was initially $6,205,000, and that was for bonds which are refunding 2003A maturities and 2003C maturities. And so again, we were able to, after receipt of bids, reduce that bond issue size down to $5,965,000. And so the winning bid on that issue was KeyBank Capital Markets, and you can see on your sheet the true interest rate was 0.63. I love saying that, 0.63. You know, I mean that's just so fantastic. So in total, these two bond issues are going to secure for the district $2.1 million of savings from the years 2014 out through 2025. So that's real money for your property taxpayers to get that reduction. So what I recommend to you tonight is to go ahead and pass by roll call vote the resolutions authorizing and awarding the bond issues, the 2012 bonds to Stifel Nicholas and Company, and the 2013 bonds to KeyBank Capital Markets. And I'm very happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Why don't we get a motion on the table before we get into questions? Do I have a motion to support the resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Julie. Is there a second? Second. Oh, second by Carrie. All right. Now questions, board members?
Heather, can you do one other piece, and that is we talk about what's the percentage reduction.
Oh, sure.
Let's talk about what the money reduction is. In other words, over the course of these refundings now, how many dollars will flow back to taxpayers in property tax reduction over the course of time, and what does that look like on kind of a year-by-year basis, or as we kind of look through the years, what will that do to the tax request that we have to pay off our debt?
Sure, absolutely, Superintendent Richardson. So we've got 4 different bond issues that we're refunding, and the complication is that they are varying maturity lengths. So we do not have a same level savings per year. So if we want to just a high level summary for 2014, that's going to mean about $124,000 of interest savings. For the year 2015, and this is combined, both of these issues together, $182,000. For the years 16 and 17, it's $164,000, and then for the years 2018 through 2024, $158,000 of savings, and then the final year is 2025, and that is $85,000. So again, in total, $2.1 million. You're also asking percentages, and percentages are a very good benchmark. So let me say the percentages separately. The 2012 bonds, this one in and of itself, total interest savings $1.6 million, or a present value of $1.5 million, and that's 13.2% of refunded debt service. That is an advanced refunding issue, and the state of Minnesota has a minimum savings threshold requirement of 3%, and you achieved 13. Phenomenal. The 2013 bonds, that one secured total interest savings of just under $460,000 with a present value of $454,000, or 6.89% of refunded debt service. So very high level of savings.
And again, 100% of those dollars are used to reduce property tax to our taxpayers, because that doesn't give us additional money for us to spend, but it means that because our debt service is reduced at that level, we actually then reduce the ask each year in terms of what people in the community need to pay in terms of debt service to pay off our bonds.
That is absolutely correct, Superintendent. Those are 100% reduction of the debt service levy of the district, because these savings are net of any costs that are associated.
Okay. And John?
Can you explain the part about the changing the amount of the bid, or the amount that's refinanced? How does that work, and
Absolutely.
What's the benefit of that?
No, that's a good question. So when we set the bond sale, we look at where our rates in the market, and we use that information to structure what would be a good starting place for taking bids. So for example, if we look at the 2012 bonds, we wanted to make sure that you were able to achieve bank qualification status on this bond issue. So that means a bond issue of $10 million or less. And then when the bids came in, Stiefel Nicholas, they bid a 3% premium. So their purchase price was $10,353,429. So what we're able to do is we take that premium, that $353,000, the amount over the $10 million, and then we can apply that right back to proceeds of the bond to then reduce the bond issue. So it's like they are providing more money up front because we are in an environment. If you look at the detailed results of sale, you can see on the very first page for the best bid, it lists the bidder, where they are located, the bond years, the interest rates, and the yields. And you can see we're in an environment where the yields are so low, the underwriters need to put a higher coupon or interest rate because they need to have some incentive for the investors to purchase those bonds. So we've got, when you look at year one on the 2012, the yield is a 0.45. So the investor is going to get interest rate, or they'll get a coupon payment of 1.5%. But really, when you look at that, it's yielding a 0.45. So they need to pay more in order to have that higher interest rate, rather than if they were going to pay and get the same rate, it would be a rate of 0.45 and a yield of 0.45. So I hope I'm explaining this in a good way. It's basically when you receive more money up front, you can reduce the bond size because they are paying a premium, paying extra to you. So, and the other great part about that is the premium is paid to you today, or technically on closing. So you get that extra money today rather than having to amortize it over the life of the bond issue, and then being able to reduce the bond issue size. You're also paying interest on a smaller amount, which even creates greater savings. So there are lots of moving pieces, and again, I hope I've addressed your question. If I haven't quite, please let me know.
Okay, so when we get that premium which is paid up front, and that reduces the bond yield, and then we're paying back this lower amount, correct? Plus the interest rate is the rate that we're paying 1.5%.
Yes.
But our real rate winds up being the yield amount of 0.45% because of the money we received up front. Is that?
Very close. Very, very close. You are absolutely right. What the district pays is the coupons. So you're paying 1.5% 2015 through 19, and then you're paying 2%. It's the investor that gets the yield of 0.45. And you don't have these detailed schedules in front of you, but another way to look at that is if we're looking at that same maturity. So a 1.5 interest rate and a 0.45 yield. The investor, the purchaser, the person who wants to have this investment because they think the Northfield Schools is a great investment, they have to pay a price of 102.209. So they have to pay more than face value. If they want to invest $10,000, they're not paying $10,000. They're paying $10,200 because they think this is such a phenomenal investment. They want to pay more. So they are the ones then, because they paid more, that their yield is a little bit lower. Hopefully that maybe makes a little bit more sense.
Thank you.
I think maybe the simple piece for people in our listening audience kind of thinking about this is what we're really doing here is very similar to what people do when they refinance their house. We've had bond issues where we have borrowed large amounts of money to cover the construction of various buildings over the course of time. And by doing these refinancings, we're able to basically come back and get a lower interest rate for the remainder of time that bond issue is in place. And in fact, because of the fact that the market is in such good position for us, unlike where it was when many of these loans were originally taken out, we're actually getting a premium in terms of the individual that's purchasing these refinance bonds, which allows us to actually reduce even the basic principal that we're working with to operate on. So
that is a very
it's just
good
it's a very positive position. It's not a position. In 32 years as a school superintendent, I've been on the other end of this. I can think about what it was like in the early 80s when we were looking at interest rates of, even on municipal and school bonds, we were looking at 8 and 9% kinds of bonds. This is phenomenal. But the great thing is, this is money that goes directly back in the pockets of our taxpayers, and it will be a benefit to them for the next 11 or 12 years in terms of that payout, because we'll actually be able to reduce the request that we have in terms of debt service during all that time.
That is a perfect example.
Okay. And just to be clear about it, I mean, we're talking about paying $2 million less in interest over the life of the bonds.
Over the life of the bonds, and as Heather indicated, that's going to be anywhere from 85,000 at kind of the low point to 185,000 in a couple of years. So that's a positive piece.
Yeah, just to add to that $2.1 million in savings will be a direct reduction to the debt service levy portion of our levy. So as we come back before you next summer and set our subsequent year levy, we will be able to reflect these savings. Obviously, it's $2.1 million over the 11 years, but that will be a direct correlation. The lesser amount is the net present value that we take into account the interest rates, which, being as low as they are, it doesn't change it by much, but the actual impact to the levy going forward is the $2.1 million reduction.
Other questions?
This is something we recommend that you do. This is a good thing.
Great.
I don't know that I could present better results. I mean, these really are. These are really phenomenal.
Great. Okay. All right, board members, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve, and we will need a roll call vote on this.
Stratmore?
Aye.
Cornell?
Aye.
Pritchard?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Fossum?
Aye.
Maple?
Aye.
And Iverson?
Aye. Excellent.
And we need two votes, one for the 12 and one for the 13.
All right. So we'll go with the first motion for the 12, and we'll ask for a motion for the 2013. Moved by Jeff. We have a second. Seconded by Ann.
Okay. Stratmore?
Aye.
Cornell?
Aye.
Pritchard?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Fossum?
Aye.
Maple?
Aye.
And Iverson?
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. All right. Community services budget revisions.
Yes, and I think that's okay. Stephanie's standing in for Hannah on this because, again, this is just our revisions, and I think Hannah wanted to make kind of that last set of revisions as she finished up so that everything is positioned and in place going forward. So.
Yeah, just to briefly recap, as we received our final audited results recently, we revisited the financial situation over in Community Ed, which, as you recall, turned out much better than they had even anticipated in FY12. So taking that into account, along with the reorganizational changes in the early childhood programs, the recent grant, the $19,000 grant that was received through the Community Ed program, as well as some newer updated contract settlement data, all of that was incorporated into the budget revision that is before you. And those were the key drivers, those four that I outlined for the adjustments made to the Community Ed budget amendment that's before you tonight.
Okay, board members, do we have a motion? Moved by Noel. Second? Seconded by Ann. Are there any questions? You can see in your memorandum the specific numbers. Any questions for Stephanie? have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor of approving these community service budget revisions for fiscal year 2013, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good. We have items for information. Fall parent. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. We have the items for the consent grouping next. Board members, is there anything you'd like to pull? And I remind you there were a few additional personnel items added to the consent grouping in the table file. Anything? No? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Carrie.
Second.
Seconded by John. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we are ready for items for information. We have fall parent-teacher conferences. Do you have anything you'd like to?
Really not any additional. As you can see the summary comparisons between last year and this year. You can see those numbers have stayed fairly the same. However, the middle school did see some increase this fall, and the Learning Center saw some decrease, although again, remember that the Learning Center numbers, it doesn't take a shift of too many parents to change the percentages significantly because the numbers are small. And actually the overall numbers at the ALC this fall are lower than they've been in the last couple of years. We're having the kids, at least at this point, are staying at the high school, or we're also beginning to see some other school districts who had gotten out of the ALC business who have gotten back into the ALC business, and so oftentimes they're starting there first.
All right. So future meetings, board members, we have one more meeting yet this year, and then we've got Monday, January 14th is our organizational school board meeting. Immediately following that will be our regular school board meeting. I'd also like to remind board members that this Friday at 5 p.m. at the Northfield Golf Club is a reception to honor Hannah for all her work. I was hoping that we could say some kind words right now and have her be present, but please come on Friday and wish her well. All right. I am looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Noel. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Julie. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting say aye.
Aye.